I'm Trudy Kerr, and welcome to The Interviewer. In this series, I talk to artists, campaigners, men and women of influence, musicians, performers, sportsmen and women, politicians, businessmen and women, and anyone who shapes the fabric of our society. About 12 months ago, a beautiful, voluptuous woman came up on my Instagram newsfeed. This wonderful smile and dark brown eyes cut through the usual noise of social media. And I thought to myself, go on, girl, as I pondered how refreshing it was to see a plus-size lass being confident in media. Then I looked at the number of followers she had and realised I was not the only one that felt that way. Emily Jones, or Miss Jones, as she is on Insta, has nearly 250,000 followers on her page. Astounded and thrilled to see this, I followed Miss Jones as her posts and stories became ever more confident. Emily Jones often refers to her OnlyFans site, and I also became intrigued as I started to investigate who this lovely lady is and how and why she got to the status that she is today. One little sneaky detail is that Emily is also a stunning stage, theatre performer and singer. Emily, welcome to The Interviewer.
There you go. Thank you very much. I've been waiting to see what you were going to say in your intro, so...
Is that okay? You're right with that?
I think that was perfectly wonderful. Who wouldn't be excited by that? So thank you very much.
Well, listen, I am really intrigued by your story. And I want to kind of take this apart today.
Okay.
But before we talk about where you are right now,
Yes.
I want to talk about your backstory because the direction is relatively new for you for what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
You were living and working in London as a recruitment consultant. So what happened?
That's right. Wow, there's a lot to cover. But yes, basically I was living and working in the UK and living in London and getting on with things there and enjoying, you know, that kind of corporate London office lifestyle, let's say. And then I fell ill. So that was really, I think, a big kind of turning point for me, personally, professionally, just in general. And yeah, I basically started having a lot of aches and pains and thinking that something wasn't quite right. And it kind of got to the stage where I felt physically like I couldn't move at all, struggling to get in and out of the office kind of thing, which led to my diagnosis of inflammatory arthritis, which a lot of people might be a bit more familiar with rheumatoid arthritis, which is a very similar kind of condition. It's just some small details of where it's not so similar. And fibromyalgia, which I was diagnosed with a little bit further down the line. But yeah, I had a really tumultuous journey with that and had to give up work because I was really unwell.
Well, this is one of the questions that I wanted to ask you because rheumatoid arthritis or inflammatory arthritis, I think some of us are familiar with that, and it's an autoimmune. It's where the body is attacking itself. But fibromyalgia is a condition I'm not very familiar with, but I do know that it can be quite chronic and extremely painful.
Yes. Fibro, I think, is quite widely misunderstood. I feel like it's kind of coming to light a bit more as of lately, and people are becoming a bit more educated around the subject, and I do think that social media has had a massive impact on that. But essentially, it's a collection of symptoms and widespread pain. But as I say, it's kind of pain, but there's other symptoms that come along with it as well. So, for example, fibro sufferers would be more prone to headaches, have more painful periods. Personally, I have a lot of skin sensitivity. So whereas you might think that, you know, if you have a little knock here or somebody presses you there or something, or you bash your shoulder and it seems like it's not such a big deal, to somebody with fibromyalgia, that can feel 100 times more painful than it would for somebody without fibro. So it makes you very sensitive. It's you're definitely a very sensitive person, certainly physically, when you have that type of condition. Yeah, so it's
So
very
this came along. Do you mind me asking, how old were you when you diagnosed with this?
I was diagnosed, I think I was about 24, 25.
And this is debilitating.
Yes. When the disease is not controlled, certainly for me and for other people with the same condition, it's completely debilitating.
So there you are in London.
Yes.
Having a successful career.
Yeah, yeah.
And this comes along. You get diagnosed with this condition, these conditions.
Yes.
And what then?
I really just thought to myself, what is going to come? I really didn't know what was going to be coming next. And I was really frightened about it all. And then, unfortunately, I was told that I had to leave, basically. So I was, I lost my job, is the way that I would put it. At the time, I mean, it's just so crazy to think that now we're in a post-COVID world where everything is done online, everybody's working from home. But at the time, when I was asking for working from home or some flexibility because I was disabled, I was told that wouldn't work for the business model. So, it's a bit of a sore point for me, I have to admit.
I have no doubt.
Yeah, but, I feel like I really do believe that everything happens for a reason, as cliched as it sounds, but sometimes I feel that you have to think that when you're going through these types of situations and just think somehow the dust is going to settle and it's going to be okay. Do you know what I mean? There was a lot of me, as I say, coming to terms with that and thinking to myself, okay, am I really disabled? Is that a label I even want to have? There's a lot of this kind of identity surrounding that kind of disability label, and also wondering what other people think of you. There's a lot of, I went through a whole load of mixed emotions about what people were thinking of me, that I wasn't working, I was on benefits. I just felt like a complete flop and a failure. And I felt like I almost had to remind myself, like, hey, you are really sick here. This isn't just, you're not just being lazy. Because I felt that people would see me sort of young, chubby woman, like maybe, limping or struggling to do something or taking the lift instead of the stairs. And I just felt that people were just looking down their noses at me and thinking, look at this lazy,
judging you.
Fat cow. Yeah, judging me, exactly. Just felt that there were lots of eyes, wondering what's wrong with you and if you're just a fat cow kind of thing. That's sort of the vibe that I would say, the overriding vibe. And also you do get situations where you're dealing with other people when they make comments that do have an impact on you around those types of things,
We're definitely going to touch on those topics that you've just raised.
Yeah, well, I think it's very important to talk about it, and something that I'm very passionate about, and I hope that my Instagram profile and my public persona can help to raise awareness about those types of things.
So let's talk about that, because then how do you go from being at home and having a blue badge and having a disability to being a public persona with at least on one Instagram page, nearly 250,000 followers?
So I would say the general kind of the basic journey. So I was just thinking, where the hell is this going? And then, unfortunately, my mum fell ill, which I'm sure you probably know from following my stories. It's I'd never know when I talk about this whether I'm going to be able to get through it all without getting upset. Or not.
Or maybe not, but rightly so.
Yeah, it's a very, it's a heartbreaking situation, but my mum fell ill with a brain tumour, which was discovered very dramatically and suddenly, really out of the blue. My mum and dad both live in Malta. As I say, I was living in London at the time. So when mum fell ill, as I say, very suddenly and very seriously, I sort of said, okay, well, I've got to come and be with her. At the time, we were told that she would only have 6 months. So I sort of felt like, okay, I want to be with her every second. And again, this is something that sometimes I feel that there was some, I don't know whether I'd call it a divine intervention or whatever. If I hadn't lost my job, I wouldn't have been able to have that time with mum. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was just such a precious thing. Anyway, we've just passed the 4-year anniversary of the discovery of her tumour. So just shows you really can't plan these things or know where life is taking you. In the first couple of years of her illness, I was going back and forth between Malta and the UK, coming and spending some time with Mum, looking after her, and then heading back to London. After a while, kind of once things sort of stabilised a little bit with her kind of routine of treatment, and I was back in my kind of childhood bedroom, let's say, and I was just bored. I was just really bored and felt that everything was just so mundane, And I'd kind of been toying with the idea of starting an Instagram page for a while. I've always been interested in maybe blogging or doing something along those lines, but never really knew what my angle would be. And I kept seeing all of these like gorgeous plus size models on Instagram and thinking to myself, wow, like look at that gorgeous woman. She's so confident, stylish. So not just wearing any old crappy plus size clothes, but like really looking good and making me feel better about myself and I thought to myself, do you know what? I can do this. I just thought it would be something that would take a long time to get going. So I kind of thought to myself, if I start now, maybe in 3 or 4 years, I'll have a bit of a following. So I just literally just said, sod it, like I'm just going to start.
But what was the goal? When you sat down, was it to emulate or to empathise with your role models, these larger ladies who are looking glamorous? Is that what you wanted to do?
I think I've always been very clear that I do my own thing. That's kind of something that's very important to me, actually. So no, I would say not really emulating, but maybe being inspired by.
Okay.
And just, I think kind of just seeing somebody else do well who you think kind of maybe looks a little bit like you or has the same body shape as you. So then you kind of think to yourself, well, if they're doing it, why can't I, So I just started kind of playing around with some mirror selfies and some pictures, and it was all very kind of I really felt like I was out on a bit of a ledge, because at that point it wasn't as if I discussed it with all of my friends and family and said, listen, I'm trying to start an Instagram page, so expect to see some photos of me. It was like I just kind of started it and posted, and then like I'll never forget kind of one of my best friends from college. I sort of said to him, I'm trying to kind of like get a few things going with Instagram. And he said, yeah, I saw you posted something the other day. And he said, I thought you were just, trying to pull. Which I just thought was so funny and kind of, a little bit like I thought to myself, oh my gosh, that's what everybody probably thinks, that I'm just like, really feeling myself at the moment.
Emily's out there.
Yeah. It was really such a whirlwind. I don't know, maybe up to my first kind of 100,000 followers. It was just...
Whoa.
Yeah,
Hang
it was
on
just...
there. Okay, Emily, you can stop right there. Because I've been on Instagram forever, and I have 3,000 followers. And I know a lot of influencers here in Malta who've been on Instagram forever, and they don't talk about 100,000 followers. How did you get from... I mean, what was the formula? Seriously, what?
So when I first started, I really ploughed all of my energy into it. So I found it was such an adrenaline rush, seeing these numbers growing and people enjoying my content. I just kind of thought, okay, this is great.
And this is just selfies. These are just photos of yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's all...
it's you.
Yeah, and all done by me with my phone set up. I mean, I say a tripod, but more often than not, it's resting against, a bookcase or a makeup mirror or, just kind of quite
just photos
resourceful.
of you. And stories of things that you're doing.
Yeah, and stories, I think, a little bit, maybe more in the beginning, where I felt that I really kind of wanted to show some personality and not just, the curves or the whatever. Like I wanted to show that I had a little bit more, there was a bit more behind it.
But I'm going to come back to that magic question again.
Yes.
A lot of people do that. A lot of people do that on socials. What was the magic formula that took you from... what normal people would have, to nearly 250,000 followers?
I certainly, wouldn't really be able to answer that scientifically. I couldn't really tell you. But why do I think people follow me? I do think it's because of this kind of obsession with being myself, and I refuse to filter, edit, airbrush anything out of my photos. So sometimes there'll be a picture and I'll be looking at it and thinking, should I put that up, shouldn't I? We're kind of picking it apart and thinking, okay, well, that part would have been a bit better if that was smoothed out or whatever. But I won't do it because I just feel very strongly about that, about having something real to look at and a bit of authenticity and representation for things that so many people embody, but we don't see online. And I feel as though it's kind of like something that we've all been harping on about for so long, but that's really important to me. So I feel that that's a big part of why I've gained followers. That's what people tell me anyway. So I think that's a big part of it.
You also share progressively as you've gone through your Instagram journey, you have shared more of you. And you have, in terms of, there's a little bit more flesh than there was to begin with. And you look stunning. And as I said right at the very beginning, I see you and I'm like, good Lord, go on, girl. Sorry to be frightful, but, really seriously cheering you on because you've embraced it. You've just gone, this is me. I'm not going to try and change myself. I'm not going to try and lose weight. And we've got a lot of influencers at the moment who are slim, talking about how we are conditioned to be slim and complaining about being slim. And you sort of don't take them very seriously because when they're complaining about how the pressure is to be slim and yet then they are slim themselves.
I just feel that
it loses some of that authenticity.
I think so. I just think it's kind of, it's just talking from a place of privilege, isn't it? And I feel a little bit sometimes that it's kind of jumping on a bandwagon of things. So they feel maybe that's a relatable thing to talk about or a kind of in thing to talk about. But, you have to kind of know your privilege, I would say, as a straight-sized person, kind of. But then at the same time, we all have insecurities, don't we? It's not right to say that a slim person isn't allowed to have insecurities about their body. We all do. And I think also, I think it's important to talk about men in the topic as well. I think there is a real lack of body positivity in the male community and a lot of double standards with that. So that's something I think...
Give me a for instance. Explain that one so it's really easy to understand.
I just think that if you see... I just think that men sometimes are made fun of because of their tummies or this and that. People talk about male balding like in a different way that would be acceptable to talking about a woman, for example. Making jokes about men's hair loss and things like that. I think, that it's actually something that should be spoken about a bit more carefully because I think, we could all do with a little body positivity, be it men or women. And I have plenty of men who message me all the time saying that they enjoy following me because they feel that I help them to live their best life and to be a bit more confident in themselves and that there's more to it than just the physical. So I love that. I love that.
Do you get a lot of those sorts of messages from women as well?
Yes, plenty of messages from women. And my goodness, I mean, it's kind of like opening Pandora's box a bit with these things.
But you have the privilege because you have this audience and because you are sharing everyday experiences, you have the privilege of touching other people on a wide variety. I'm sure it's not just that. I mean, that stands out. Yeah. But you must get people responding to you and drawing a parallel with you or saying, I know how you feel. Yeah. That must happen all the time.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also, something that I'm really keen on is not putting yourself into a box and also not letting other people put you into a box. So I think, there's this kind of, maybe this mentality of, the chubby, bubbly friend kind of, not the main character vibe, as we would put it nowadays, as the TikTokers would say. And I just kind of think to myself, like, you can be whoever you want to be. So, you know, if you really want to feel yourself, you're feeling sexy, like, why shouldn't you? And why shouldn't you dress to feel your best and look after yourself, regardless of what stage of your bodily journey that you're at?
Well, that leads me very nicely onto another question I'm really dying to ask you, because I've asked influencers this before. If you're an influencer, you have to keep feeding the machine.
Yeah.
Does that not become exhausting? Are there not days when
Yes.
you've gone to
Yes.
see family, or you've just had a, you know, or you're on holiday? You've just recently on holiday in Lapland.
Yes,
Nice.
yeah, it was really nice.
But you have to keep feeding the beast.
Well,
and these are
yes.
influencers who have a tenth and less of the followers that you have, and even they're saying, you know, well, you know, sometimes I don't want to.
Yeah.
And they've had to plan every shot when they're on holiday.
Yeah. Well, the way I do things is that I kind of think to myself, look, I'm doing my bloody best in the situation that I'm in. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes I have to kind of stop and say to myself, like, you know, think about it, like you're dealing with this situation with your mother, various other things going on. So it's kind of like, okay, let's not put too much pressure on here, and let's step back and assess the situation and think, okay, actually, you're doing all right for yourself, all things considered. So that's number one. I think it's very important to be patient with yourself and kind to yourself and not berate yourself. And then I would say it's kind of like a little bit of a balance of things. So it's my job. So I think we all have days where we think, oh, I can't be bothered with work today, can't be bothered to do that, can't be bothered. But we do, because that's our job. And then also, obviously, it's really fun. So
Okay, you do have a point there.
So, you know, it is fun, even when it can be tedious. It's fun.
And we're going to stay with Instagram for just 1 second. I have
Okay.
one question before we move on to everything else that you do.
Yes.
But I mentioned before that you do show a bit of flesh. Where in Instagram do you draw the line? Because we'll talk about OnlyFans in a minute, but where do you draw the line? And I'm kind of nervous to say this, but some women might perceive images as being degrading to women. I love them. I
Right.
think you're brilliant. But
Right.
do you ever get women
Oh, my goodness.
asking you that or commenting on that?
To be honest, really the only times that I have that is when I've been featured in any Maltese press, and then I have a lot of local ladies who seem to have a bit of a problem with it. But I feel like that's maybe just like a cultural or generational kind of thing. But, you know, I'm of the generation that, you know, I don't place my value solely on my body. My body's just my husk, my shell. You know, it just kind of, I just think we all need to lighten up with it a little bit, to be honest. And also, I think a really important point to make is that if you see a plus size woman doing something, wearing something, posing in a certain way that you've got a problem with, would you have a problem with somebody who was a size 6 doing the exact same thing? I would say in most situations the answer would be no. So, you know, where's the problem there? Is it me, or is it your perception and judgment of me? Do you see what I mean?
I see exactly what you mean, and I
So-
think that's a bloody good question.
And I think probably, you know, maybe like other kind of curvy women can kind of relate to this. Like if you've got like big boobs, for example, you know, when you're wearing something that's fairly modest, it might kind of look a little bit sexier or a bit more. So there's a real double standard there automatically. So I think that this kind of movement that I feel that I am part of is a little bit like, okay, well, do you have a problem with the clothes? Am I being inappropriate? Or are you just reflecting your judgments back onto me because of your perception of what a fuller figured woman should be looking
Emily
like?
Jones,
dressing
I really
like.
like you.
Oh.
I really like the fact that you come back from these questions with a very, very intelligent and psychologically grounded answer.
Thank you. Well,
It's
that's
not
really
just a
lovely of
whim.
you.
I have one last question for you, because we talked then about turning it into a business.
Yes, yeah.
So of Instagram, somebody asked me just today, how do you make money from Instagram? Well, you normally make money from Instagram by sponsorship and endorsement.
Exactly, yeah.
But you've taken it a little bit step further because you have an OnlyFans site,
yes, I do,
which is monetized.
Yes, yeah.
And as soon as I said OnlyFans, you just went with the biggest grin on your face. You're like, oh, let's talk about that, girlfriend.
Well, I just feel that it's something that people are always very curious about.
Yes,
so,
I am.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So what do you want to know?
And Emily calls me out. You rightly so, in an interview with Love in Malta, you said that it's got a reputation for being X-rated content because nothing is off limits there. But you can technically post whatever you like. It's just a place for more premium content that you can access freely. I've seen fitness Instagrammers only on OnlyFans accounts to post more advanced workout routines. And you've made it very clear that OnlyFans is just for monetizing content.
Yeah.
Which I understand.
Yeah.
But is that, you also infer in your Instagram that if you do go to OnlyFans fans and find you, that you're going to find something a little bit more racy.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is, basically. So I would say that, rightly so, as you said, you cannot make money through Instagram. It's not like, well, actually it's something that they're hoping to introduce, I believe, but it's not like YouTube or TikTok where a certain number of views will relay to money in your bank account. You have to do the business development through there. So as you say, ads, sponsorships, things like that, where, like I've been approached about so many different things where you could get a quick buck from this, quick buck from that, whatever. But if it's not something that I'm kind of passionate about or that I would actually use, I wouldn't sort of go ahead with that type of deal. So I think that that's a little bit of a compromise as well and a bit of a payoff. So I feel that by doing my OnlyFans, I can kind of keep my content a little bit more on my Instagram to what I would like it to be without having to think about posting for a brand deal or a sponsorship. So that's kind of one thing that I love about OnlyFans. So I was just like meddling through, I started my Instagram maybe like 3-4 months prior to being invited to start OnlyFans. And I kind of still hadn't started making any money off it yet and was kind of thinking, when are these deals all going to start dropping out of the sky that everybody says once you get a following, you start making money. And I had a message from somebody saying like, oh, love your page. And she had a really big page, about 450,000 followers at the time. And she sort of said, I hope it's proving lucrative to you. So, of course, that caught my interest because I thought, no, it's not. And I'd like it to be. What are you saying? What are you saying? And so that's how I met my mentor, who has mentored me through OnlyFans and starting my OnlyFans, who basically suggested that I start one and kind of gave me a little bit of a guide as to what I should do or what I could do and how it could work. So I thought about it. I did give it quite a lot of thought before I started. It wasn't something that I just kind of upped and did right away. Spoke about it with my family, for example, and some friends, and then just decided to go ahead, basically. So I made my OnlyFans page, and we are coming on in September. Well, let's say 2.5 years. 2.5 years I've been doing it now. So.
And
crazy.
This is a real income. This is an income more than you were making in London.
It can be. I would say kind of, I'm very reluctant to kind of say like, oh, you can make amazing money on it. I think you can, but it can also be very average for me, for other people. It really just depends on a few different things. But I would say that this kind of idea that just starting an OnlyFans automatically means dollar signs is not always the case. So I do want people to be very aware of that. And I've spoken about that quite a lot in the past. As I know there is also a real kind of, whilst I know that people have their opinions on it and it can be thought of as just the worst thing ever, there are a lot of people, I think, who glamorize it.
Your parents, your family, everyone in your family, your friends, they totally embraced you being on OnlyFans?
I mean, I'd say so. I think they kind of didn't really have much of a choice, to be honest. But I did sit everybody down, as I say, before I decided to go ahead, and sort of said, listen, I'm thinking of doing this. This is kind of pretty much what it's going to entail. So just so that you're aware and there's no nasty surprises, and sort of, I think they just kind of looked into it a little bit and then said, okay, well, you know what you're doing. I mean, as I say, at the end of the day, I am a 32-year-old woman, so it's not like anybody can really have a say in what I'm doing. But I feel that I've kind of made the best out of a difficult situation for myself, for my family, and helped myself get to a position where things are a bit more comfortable, again, based on not knowing where things were going with my life, with my career, with my finances. So I think that's all a kind of perfect storm that led to this decision.
If you don't mind me, Emily, I'm going to contradict you.
Right.
Because you said you've done okay out of this situation.
Yeah.
I'm going to completely agree with this. I would say that anybody who's been in your situation where at one point you pretty much lost the world that you knew, you've embraced this new path, you've done incredibly well, and talking to you today has been so refreshing and so surprising. And I want to say thank you so much. I could talk to you forever, but we really have talked forever. So I'm going to say thank you ever so much indeed. But I am thoroughly thrilled for you for turning around the situation that looks so bleak into something so positive, and it beams and radiates from you as a human being.
Oh, well, that's always been what I kind of aspire to. So honestly, when you're saying all these nice things, I don't know what to say. You're making me blush, but that's so lovely. Thank you. And I think sometimes we need to have a reminder. As I say, it's not just for myself, but for other people out there. You're doing your best. You're doing what you can. And you must try to make the most out of your life and out of your situation. Cards are going to be dealt to you that you don't expect, that you don't want, and you can't change that. So the only thing that you can change is what you do in those circumstances. So just
you're a stunning
stick
role
with
model.
it.
Stunning role model, Emily Jones. Thank you so much for being with me on the interview.
Thank you for having me. Lovely.
For those willing to change the world one step at a time. For those dreaming of sustainable living. For those striving to find a healthier balance. For those always believing. Browns and Viridian. Love the planet, love yourself.